The joy of love. Good morning. Welcome to Radio Maria Ireland. Thanks indeed for your company. Shout out to everybody on Facebook and YouTube as well. Just gone live on the camera there too. And thanks to everyone listening in on the radio. If you hear a little bit of a fan in the background, that's actually the air conditioning. Just see if I can turn it down just a fraction. I'm not sure if I can. Fan speed maybe. Let's see if this will work. There we go. It might slow it down a bit. Not sure. We'll see. If it's too noisy, we'll turn it off if it's distracting there from the sound quality. Ooh. So now, lovely to have your company. It's 21st of July, this Wednesday, and still sweltering hot, and nice and hot actually here in Dublin. Maybe a little bit too hot for some, so do be careful. Do be mindful indeed of exposure to the sun. As you know, our fair skin does not do well under too much sunshine. Enough to get your vitamin D quota, but not too much indeed. Wait till the evening time maybe to venture out and get out and about under it. Maybe might be the safest thing to do. Anyway, we're so mindful of our health and so mindful of all these other things nowadays. It's not a bad thing, but I don't know. You think back when you were a child, you ran around carefree and all these things didn't bother you in the least. And when you get older, you're hypersensitive to all of these things. So there's got to be a healthy balance somewhere in the middle of all of this too. Very good. Do get in touch with me. Form part of the conversation here. We do like to hear from you. 089467200 as usual is the text and WhatsApp number. info@radiomaria.ie, of course, as well, if you want to send us an email. And write to us at St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymount Road, Dublin 22. And Mary will answer the phone there as well, 014123456. Yeah, I think that fan speed a little bit better on the air conditioning there behind me now. Just remember the late and dear friend of Radio Maria, Desmond Kelly. He died in 2016, 5 years ago today. So may he rest in peace. Des Kelly, a name known in Dublin, Des Kelly Carpets. He had a carpets and furniture, I think, chain of stores, and had an amazing conversion through a pilgrimage to Medjugorje and a major turnaround in his life. And I met him many times in the Morning Star hostel run by the Legion of Mary, where he was very good to come in and spend his time and care for the poor. And I know indeed he gave many a job actually to those homeless men, again, who were so inclined and so disposed in his business to help them get back on their feet again. Marvellous man, great endeavour. So there's I see a picture of him there with his pioneer pin on as well. Good to see that. So fine man, I met him many times, and a lovely gentleman, and very kind indeed to Father Michael here in the early founding of Radio Maria Ireland as well, back in around that time. I'd say he only just would have heard of its coming on air. So he died in 2016. Well, I suppose, no, wait, let me think now, 2050, yeah, it was 25th, sorry, I'm wrong there in my head, time just marches on too quickly. May 2015, so yes, he would have been around here. So only a few months between himself and the late Father Michael Ross as well. So, you know the lovely story with Des Kelly that after his conversion experience, he decided to close all his stores on Sundays and allow his staff to take that day of rest and worship. And he hit the headlines on the public media for it, and some were aggrieved and some were congratulating him. But he was a man of great principle and conviction when it came to it, and he said, look, Sunday's a day of rest, and so I'm closing my businesses and the Lord will look after me. It's not as if my furniture businesses need to be open on a Sunday. So fair play to him. I'm not sure if it's still the case. It'd be interesting to inquire in that regard. I'm not sure whether his successors, whether or not it's his family again, I'm not sure there either. But interesting certainly, and a man of his convictions. Very good. So many thanks. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed to the mercy of God rest in peace. Amen. Certainly. Now, St. Lawrence of Brindisi, a doctor of the church once again. Somebody very kindly sent me in a list of all the doctors of the church, and I wherever it went to, or maybe it was in a WhatsApp message, I'll have to flick back through and uncover that again. I was just curious to know how many doctors of the church there are, male and female, of course. So St. Lawrence, 1619, a Capuchin who preached to the Counter-Reformation, led German armies against the Turks in Hungary, and gain peace for the people of Naples, it says in the liturgical calendar today. And I'll take a little bit from my Oxford dictionary of saints, which I like to use as well. It's this little volume appeals to me. This, I'm sure, belonged to Father Michael. Yes, Father Michael's name is in the back of it there. October 2015 is when he put his hands on this book. Interesting. Thanks, Michael. Actually, isn't that interesting? 31st of October. I'm sure that was the date Father Michael was in Rome for his meeting with the Pope that time, gathering, no doubt, in Collevalenza for the World Family of Radio Maria in 2015. So that's when he must have bought this book. God rest Father Michael as well. So Lawrence, born at Brindisi near Naples, of a wealthy Venetian family, and he became a Franciscan at Verona at the age of 16. And he soon developed an extraordinary gift of learning languages, both ancient and modern, and for the study of the text of the Bible. These aptitudes were used at Rome, where he was deputed by Pope Clement VIII to work specially for the conversion of the Jews. He must have been very fluent then in Hebrew, Aramaic perhaps too. He was then sent to establish the Capuchin reform in Germany and founded houses at Prague and Vienna and Gorizia. He became Minister General in 1602. Now again, isn't that an interesting year, because 1601, as we know, when St. Oliver Plunkett was martyred. So while all that was going on, Ireland and England and all that time of the Reformation, here was St. Lawrence of Brindisi, moving forward all the time with the Capuchin reform and strengthening relationships with the Jewish people. So after becoming Minister General, he refused re-election 3 years later, but later was Commissary General and Definitor General. They're obviously titles within the Franciscan community there. He also acquired some political and even military importance. Rudolf II, the emperor, gave him the mission of uniting the German princes against the Turks. So, interesting, church and state coming together there. And the Turks, of course, invading Europe, really, and seeking to a takeover, military takeover. As chaplain general, he exhorted the troops and rode in front of them. Wow. Armed only with a crucifix, in the striking victory of Zsíkes Fervor, I'm presuming that's in Hungary, I'm not pronouncing that well at all, in 1601. So again, Oliver Plunkett, here he was riding with troops, armed only with a crucifix against the Turkish forces. Extraordinary. Later, he persuaded Philip III of Spain to join the Catholic League and founded a Capuchin house at Madrid. And soon after, he became nuncio at Munich. Munich, as we know, of course, the 3-hour spin away there from Radio Horeb, our friends there in Germany. Indeed, I hope they're recovering from the terrible floods there in Germany of late. Gosh, many lives lost there, sadly. Both coordinating the efforts of the League then and being active in preaching and peacemaking there at Munich. And no doubt, with his gifted languages, probably quite fluent in German too. In 1618, he retired to Caserta for a life of contemplative devotion in humble simplicity. And for this, he was sent to Spain and Portugal. From this, that he was sent to Spain and Portugal to persuade Philip III to replace the Viceroy of Naples. He died at Lisbon and was buried in a Poor Clare cemetery at Villafranca. Canonized in 1881, 250 more years later, 60, and declared a Doctor of the Church by Pope St. John XXIII in 1959. His works include sermons, a commentary on the Book of Genesis, and some controversial works against the Lutherans. So again, another marvelous figure in the Church, how the Lord raises up these men and women who are just extraordinary leaders, great courage, tremendous witness, and so many gifts and talents of diplomacy, no doubt in this case, of languages, of reaching out to other peoples there, the Jews, and Philip III of Spain, those are the princes, they said, in Germany, uniting them against the Turks. You know, that kind of extraordinary influence is born of the order of grace, surely. And so as a doctor of the Church, indeed, a great figure and leader and inspiration. and just ending his life there, retiring into a contemplative life. You know, not seeking worldly ambition. That's definitely the stuff of saints there. And facing real serious difficulties on all sides, between Hungary and Germany there, Spain and Portugal, and back to Naples again, trying to resolve things, and in his own community. Is anything different? Plus ça change, that they say in France. The more things change, the more they stay the same. In our day, we have the same struggles, but a different context, the same issues going on between us and between nations maybe, and so on. All of these things, maybe a better era of peace altogether in many ways, and a flourishing and a means of communication far beyond what they would have had back in those days. So we're so blessed, really, in so many ways. And the question is, are we using these good resources maybe as we ought to, in the service of faith, in the service of truth, in the service of goodness? That's the challenge all the while. And the stuff of saints then are those who are able to faithfully, maybe unseen, unnoticed, unobserved, might never be made a doctor of the church, except on Father Owen's breakfast show on a Tuesday morning. That might be as near as any of us aspire to that. It's not something you aspire to anyway. It's a kind of a post-factum type of thing long after we're dead, just like canonization. Nobody can be assured of anything in this life, so full of vicissitudes are we, and is life. There's nothing really so certain in that regard, and not something to be striven afterwards anyway, because vainglory and pride can easily step in and ruin all of these things. Rather, that we simply be humble and faithful servants to the Lord in everything, really. Let me see. I see a nice little story here that's been put before me. I think Tara might have printed this off here. It's nice just to catch in on the Irish Catholic Bishop's news and the news from Vatican and the Rome as well. So preparations are going ahead in the Diocese of Galway for the ordination of Reverend Deacon John Gerard Acton. So he'll be ordained next month as a priest of the Diocese of Galway. Lovely to hear that. So Bishop Brendan Kelly will ordain him in the Diocese of the Cathedral of Our Lady Assumed into Heaven at 3 p.m. on Sunday the 1st of August. So that's coming up Sunday week. And Deacon Acton is from Knock-on-Rennie in Moycullen, the youngest of 4, and attended primary and secondary school in Moycullen and Spiddal, and went on to graduate from GMIT with a BA in Business and in Communications. Now that will surely stand to him in his priesthood. He spent a number of years working in Debenhams, of all places, and of course Debenhams is a clothing chain, department store, before taking up a position in the Park House Hotel. So a man of some experience and accomplishment there. And he spent 6 years in formation in Maynooth. So in a letter published ahead of his ordination, Deacon John Gerard Acton, he expresses his thanks to the people of the diocese and for all those who were part of his formation journey. He writes, faith is something that was always very important to us at home, and my sense of calling to priesthood was by no means sudden. It was something that gradually increased over many years. Excuse me. My 6 years in seminary provided me with the opportunity to discern what God really wanted to do with my life. Excuse me, I'm just taking a drink of water. But that's exactly what seminary is for. You know, it's a time of discernment. It's not that you enter the seminary or enter a religious house and, you know, boom, you're suddenly, you know, a missionary or a religious or a priest. It's a time of discernment. And many leave recognizing that they discern this call is not for them. I'm very grateful to my parents, Seamus and Maureen, family and friends and colleagues of the diocese, and all who have travelled this journey with me. I've been humbled by the support I have received these past years. I ask you to please continue to keep me in your prayers as I approach my ordination to priesthood and my first appointment in the diocese. Excuse me. So attendance at the ordination mass obviously will have to be limited, but Deacon Acton, soon to be Father Acton, hopes that people will join in this ceremony online, galwaydiocese.ie /ordination there, if you want to check that out. 1st of August, 3 p.m. from the cathedral there. So congratulations, Deacon Acton. And good to see that, yes, the numbers have diminished somewhat, but there are still young men following a call to respond to the Lord to a vocation to priesthood and religious life in Ireland today. So do not be dismayed, do not be disheartened. Yes, the number of labourers coming to the harvest has diminished somewhat, but the harvest is still rich. And what it means really is there may be a dearth of ordinations and religious vocations, but the laity, we certainly as lay men and women, speaking of we in the royal sense, have a great commission, a great task on hand to keep the church going. I mean, what happened during the penal laws when there wasn't a priest in sight anywhere in Ireland? They were in disguise, they were in hiding and so on. But they were around, but the faithful had to carry on living and passing on the faith and baptizing, no doubt, and burying the dead. But the priests in secret in mass rocks coming to celebrate Mass as and when they could, keeping that faith alive. Extraordinary. I noticed Father John got on his book choice list, The Hunted Priest. Fowler's book, I remember I mentioned this some time ago, how they survived in England particularly. They were hunted down mercilessly, priests were, and they really took their lives in their hands, and they were terribly tortured when they were caught. But such extraordinary bravery for the faith, really most extraordinary, fabulous, So there we are. Just a little earlier, you might like to listen back to it. We'll play it back for Sunday morning. Very appropriate for Sunday morning, it will be too. Father Billy Swan was chatting about grandparents and a day for grandparents and the elderly. And I'm pretty sure Pope Francis that has arisen out of Catherine Wiley and her group, the Grandparents Association, the Catholic Grandparents Association, and her petitions to Rome, I'm sure, and her influence have seen that this is fantastic. It's a great initiative that's gone into the church's, field of vision, you might say. And so a day for grandparents and the elderly being celebrated next Sunday. So Father Billy Swan was chatting about this earlier, and just echoing and sharing really the sadness that so many of our elderly feel at the loss of faith in the next generation and in grandchildren too. And just a lovely thought he was sharing was that those courageous and valiant and faithful grandparents of our day should not feel in any way responsible or maybe laying too much blame on their own doorstep, let's say, for the loss of faith of coming generations. It is very sad, and it is very trying indeed for many, and he was echoing all of that by all means, but that the order of grace is very different from the order of nature, and God sees things very differently from the way we see them, and not to underestimate the power and influence of the good you sought to do in bringing up your children, and in passing on the faith, having them baptized, make their first communion, and not to underestimate the great power and influence indeed you continue to have upon them in the living of your faith today, and in the small things you seek to do. Like John, he phoned up there during the show, and he was saying how for his grandchildren, when they call around, he makes sure to just lift them up to the holy water font on their way out the door and just teach them to bless themselves. Simplest little thing ever. And I know my own mum, with the grandchildren coming to visit at home as well, she did the same thing, but she lowered the holy water font so that the small children could actually reach it themselves and then show them how to bless themselves. And sure enough, Mum and Dad were glad to be able to do the same too. And it's a nice little commemorative thing that is small but significant, that will stay with that child and the parents always. These are the little things, marvelous ways that you can be of influence. Don't for 1 second underestimate the order of grace and the value of grace, and just the seed sown in the hearts and minds and souls of your children and grandchildren by your great concern for them in grace. I've often mentioned the lovely grandmother I know who puts it to her children without putting a tooth on. She says, look, all that matters to me is that we all get to heaven and that I meet you all there. I don't care. You take and leave whatever you want. You can fight over the house, you can fight over the will, you can fight over whatever you want to fight over. But here's the bottom line. I want to get to heaven and I want you to be there too. Whatever else goes on. Now, with that, of course, it's not always approached in that sort of flippant way, but there's tremendous sacrifice and love shown there for the children, concerned for them in all their other needs too. And that's the task at hand. I think, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a father and a grandfather, that responsibility you take with you all the way to the brink of the grave, I would imagine, in the sense that the responsibility for them continues, and their salvation is, if you like, in your hands to a certain extent, or at least you have a certain role to play. Each, obviously, we can't force anybody to come to believe in God, but we can certainly support and be with them and remind and cajole and do all the little things, like giving a gift of a miraculous medal, leaving the Bible open, having Radio Maria on in the background. I know many do that as well. Just the small little ways of sowing seeds. We have had it time and again here, and I must say it's very moving, as I mentioned too, for me, when I hear of children and our siblings telling us how their loved one, person who has died maybe of late, the last year or two certainly, listening and tuning into Radio Maria, and what a great consolation and blessing it was for them in their final days and hours that it was on, and just the prayerful, gentle voices in the background. And that's, to me, very touching when you hear that, say, from children of a parent, an elderly parent who has died, or grandchildren too, or brothers and sisters. Again, all this is of the order of grace, and who knows how souls are being touched and how the Lord is still inviting back to faith. So we must never lose heart, we must never give up hope, and simply persevere, even if the days seem a little bit dark or the hope seems not to be there on the horizon. The Lord sees all these things so very differently. So just to encourage you all, we'll hear a little bit more about that. We'll repeat Father Billy's show, of course, on Sunday morning if you're waking up and about and want to listen in about 9:30 or so after the Office of Readings. Usually tips a little bit over the 9:30 mark because the office is a bit longer. So on Sunday morning, have a listen back to Father Billy there chatting about that again. Or if you're well disposed to the internet and all these things, to have a look on our podcast page. It might not be up just yet, but I'm sure in the course of today or tomorrow it'll find its way up onto our podcast site if Sunday morning doesn't suit you to further repeat either. Good. Let me just take a little breather right here, and Tara's on the mixing desk and looking after the music for me as well. She has a nice little piece here, sung by 8 voices, sung by voces 8 or voces 8 maybe, I don't know, or octo, whatever. Adoramus Te Christi, composed by Claudio Monteverdi. So I'm going to leave you with this lovely piece of music and encourage you, again, please get in touch. 089 467 2000 is the text and WhatsApp number. info@radiomaria.ie to email in, and call us up here. Please do 014 123456. Put a +353 in front of those numbers. Drop the 0 if you're calling from the north or from outside of Ireland as well. And don't forget, here on social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, etc., 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 leave a little comment, like, share, follow, and subscribe. So lots of ways to get in touch. Messenger, of course, is another handy way just to drop in a little message if you're holding your smartphone. So thanks again. Looking forward to hearing from you. Any little topic you might like touched in on or shared. We'll certainly continue on our little journey there into the question of ad gentes, to the peoples and mission and our role in all of that as well. So now Claudio Monteverdi, and back after this lovely piece of music. Turn it off for a bit, nice and cool. Lovely, thank you. Oh, that beautiful piece of music there. Thanks, Tara, for uplifting us there today with that. I hope you found it nicely meditative. Adoramus te Christi, we adore you, Christ, by your cross. Of course, to finish that, you have saved the world, by Claudio Monteverdi, Voces 8. That's the name of that group there. So welcome back to Radio Maria Ireland. Father Eamonn with you here, as always, for this little slot in the morning. You can watch in on Facebook and YouTube if you want. If you have a smart TV, you can put it on the corner and have me looking. There's nothing to see much, really, but you'll get a sense of the face behind the voice, if nothing else. And just nice to have a little bit of company, I suppose, at home too. Thanks to everybody listening in as well, and thanks to everybody getting in touch. Another nice little story just to share with you. Tara put in front of me there from the CatholicNews.com. It's nice just to dip into these. VaticanNews.va, CatholicNews.ie, CatholicNews.com, and the Irish Bishops' Conference, and so on. You'll always find good news stories, you know. It doesn't always have to be bad news. There's plenty of good news to share as well. It's a nice little story of Father Joseph Carroll, good Irish name there, Monsignor Joseph Carroll, who died recently at the age of 80. And he's known far and wide in the States, certainly San Diego, as the largest homeless services provider. Father Joe's Villages, they're known as. Interesting. So great apostle of the poor, and started off in his early ministry as a priest just giving peanut butter sandwiches to the poor. And just a lovely, nice, simple, again, it's always the way like Mother Teresa as well, these great saints, they keep it very simple. That the homeless are just neighbours who need our help. What's the problem here? When you take the name homeless out of it, you know, it seems to take the fear out of working with our neighbours in need. There you go. Couldn't have said a simpler and better word. So Father Joe had a great gathering back in 2012 of all those involved in the great work of these Father Joe's Villages, as they came to be known, and has done marvellous work indeed for the poor over a long period of time as well. Sadly, his health took a toll on him, his diabetes, in later years, and not able to do as much as he used to. But born back in 1941, so 8 years of age, and became nationally known for his work with the homeless over the years. San Diego, of course, California, and you'd imagine California, will there be any poor there? It's like Ireland, where the poor, there's plenty of people to be served and ministered to. And this is one element always to keep in mind. And I've mentioned this yesterday. I think we were chatting about it last night at the U-Chat. You know, if you want to do away with the church, you want to drive it over the cliffs of Moher, as I often say, well, you've got to do away with all the wonderful charity work that goes with it, that the state couldn't possibly hope to attend to. All of the wonderful witnesses, and heroic witnesses at that, like Monsignor Joe here, who gives so unstintingly in the service of the poor. If you know you want to, rid the country of the church, well then that's going too. All that goodness and kindness and charity and selflessness that you cannot put a price on. So let's not be quick to turn away from our faith and to abandon it for all the good and evil that comes from it. So Father Joe is one of those. So there's a memoir of him written by a Catherine Cloward, Father Joe, Life Stories of a Hustler Priest. It's interesting. So obviously there's a sense of humour in behind this, and that's evident there that these saintly people, they do it with great joy. There's apparently a new building being opened up for Father Joe's Villages. That whole company, I suppose, owns and manages 10 buildings across San Diego County now, and provides support services and rental assistance to many more, helping the poor there. Its most recent building, the St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa, is a 14-story building expected to open next January, which will include 407 units for more than 500 people and community space on every floor. Very impressive. So a wonderful saintly man, God bless him, and a powerful witness there. So nice good news story there. Now the Pope as well draws our attention, as he is wont to do, to the problem areas of the Church, that we might keep them in prayer and keep them in mind. So we hear of these heroic endeavours on behalf of the poor, and we certainly come to the aid and prayerful support of all who are suffering otherwise in the world. The Pope is saddened at the loss of life in Iraq, the explosion and loss of life in Baghdad in a marketplace there. The Pope sending condolences to the families and friends of those who have died, entrusting their souls to the mercy of Almighty God. So he renews his fervent prayers that no act of violence will diminish the efforts of those who strive to promote reconciliation and peace in Iraq. Apparently 30 people died as a result and dozens more wounded. The deadliest such attack in Baghdad in the past 6 months. The Pope visited Baghdad not that long ago. And you know how in Radio Maria we have a new Radio Maria station in Erbil in Iraq too. Extraordinary and a great blessing, and indeed, please God, hopefully a great instrument of peace in Iraq among Christians there, and who knows, maybe some small little seeds of evangelization too as well. So in Mosul, his visit there in March it was, the Pope prayed for all the victims of the ongoing violence in Iraq, saying that its diverse religious and cultural fabric is weakened by the loss of any of its members, however small. So his prayer uttered there echoes once again, to you, O God, we entrust all those whose span of earthly life was cut short by the violent hand of their brothers and sisters. We also pray to you for those who cause such harm to their brothers and sisters. May they repent, touched by the power of your mercy. And just ends their eternal rest. Grant unto them, O Lord. Let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. And mindful too indeed of the violence that's ongoing and the number of deaths in South Africa of late too. Again, turmoil there with I think a sort of military overthrow, if I'm not mistaken, at work there too. Myanmar, another country sorely tried and afflicted again with this conflict, and many deaths as well. So our poor world is in such need of God's mercy and in such need of peace and of reconciliation. And again, this really is where Christianity, not as it's falsely and incorrectly characterized, mischaracterized as being, religion causing wars. That's certainly not the case. In the case of Christianity, we don't have armies, we don't have a military, we don't have any of these things. Rather, it's a handshake or a hand reaching out, rather, in peace and in service and in love and respect for the poor and the downtrodden. Again, schooling, in education, in Mary's Meals is another case in point, simple one, providing food for children in their classrooms, for the sick, nursing and care in so many ways. And the Pope, you'll see these little symbolic gestures he does of sending out face masks or breathing, what are these called, these intubators, the oxygen breathing apparatus, and that to places struck by the virus and that. All of these gestures as a sign that the Church is there to reach out to the poor and the sick. So again, we should be very slow to condemn our faith and see rather instead the great good that our faith teaches us and invites us to share and to bring to others. Hence the need again for this missionary endeavour and our constancy really in doing whatever our calling is according to our state in life and our role in life, to reach out to others and bring this gift of faith to others. And I just continue with Ad Gentes, just a little paragraph, a little few sentences or two again. In order that this missionary zeal might flourish among their fellow countrymen, it would help greatly if the young churches took part in the universal mission of the Church as soon as possible and sent missionaries to preach the gospel throughout the whole world, even though they are themselves short of clergy. Interesting. So, sending off your best men or your best women off into the mission fields, that does something remarkable. When Frank Duff had this idea too in the Legion of Mary, that you get a presidium started and then, pick your best members and send them off to start another presidium somewhere else, and let the young, rather frail presidium find its feet, and those members who are maybe lacking experience or in a little inability or something would find strength in rising up through the ranks and trying to support the presidium that's weakened by the loss of its stronger members. And the Church too, you see, the same idea, that in sending off, missionaries, the local Church then is strengthened because they hear back of the great ambition and the great outreach from their own, and there's a great sense of achievement or a sense of being part of the universal Church. There's great wisdom in that idea. So it says, in a sense, their communion with the universal Church will be perfect when they themselves take active part in the missionary work on behalf of other nations. It's like, as we've received the gift of faith, we seek as soon as we can to give it away. And in that process, as always, there's strengthening of the faith and of the Church too. So the Church isn't truly established and does not fully live, nor is it a perfect sign of Christ, unless there is a genuine laity existing and working alongside the hierarchy. And Frank Duff was very strong on this idea. It's very simple. The mystical body, he said, must function as a whole. So the head, if you like, Christ, the head, and the heart and the body must function together. So in the parish setting, he would see that the head, Christ, in the person of the priest, and the members then in the person of the laity gathered around him, just like Jesus and the 12 apostles and all the wonderful women who accompanied him. Again, heading off, 72 of them, into the towns and villages round about in pairs. And so the mystical body functioning as a whole, head and members. And this is exactly what the document is saying to us today as well. For the gospel cannot become deeply rooted in the mentality, life and work of a people without the active presence of lay people. Again, active doesn't necessarily mean getting a job or a role inside the church for the celebration of prayer or worship. Active, I would suggest, means some way missionary, some way reaching out, whatever little endeavour or activity it might be. Therefore, from the foundation of a church, very special care must be taken to form a mature Christian laity. And the way to grow in maturity and faith, again, very simply, is to give it away, is to be a missionary, to share it. Again, it might be the holy waterfront at the front door for your grandchild. Wonderful, absolutely marvellous. Keep it up. These are the little ways. The lay faithful belong fully both to the people of God and to civil society. I had this chat last night on UChat. in the influence indeed good lay people animated by faith can have in the realm of politics too. They belong to the nation into which they were born. They begin to share in its cultural riches by their education. They are linked to its life by many social ties. They contribute to its progress by personal effort in their professions. They feel its problems to be their own, and they try to solve them. They belong also to Christ, because by faith and baptism they have been reborn in the church, so that by newness of life and work they might belong to Christ, in order that all things might be subjected to God in Christ, and that God might be all in all. So, sure enough, we have all those who are marvelously involved in various professions. It might simply be at home, as a homemaker. I like that little expression too. Or some profession, some career, some education, and that. All that helps to build up the community. But again, belonging to Christ means bringing up or building up the community in and with Christ as well. So there's our mission. So again, it's not, it sort of brings it home to us maybe. It's not so much having to go off and be completely fully qualified as a missionary or to get all this great education and so on. In the ordinary things we do each and every day, we can seek ourselves to be missionary in the faith we have received and in the sharing of that faith. Very good, I'll leave that there for now. So nice to share those little items with you. I hope some of them were of interest and of formative value to you. And thanks indeed for listening in, and thanks for being part of the radio here as well. So very good. I see there Father Joe Carroll, the fourth of 8 children born to Irish Catholic immigrant parents. A father who did labour and a mother who cleaned offices. Money was tight. He got his first job in a neighbourhood bookshire shop when he was 8, and later he sold Christmas trees and fixed laundry machines. So sounds like a man of character. So thanks Christine, Mary, Vincent and George and Merlita, Eileen, Maura, Sharon as well, and Gurpreet there. So shout out to everybody on Facebook today. Oops, I've overshot my mark. I'll lose my credit here. I'll take my leave of you and look forward to chatting with you again on Chatechesis, please God, tomorrow morning. Time now for Angelus and midday prayer.